Hey, Tom.
Hello.
Well, we'll see how we go tonight.
Yep.
How was your fishing?
It was good. August is different than June. So it was kind of interesting, a little bit of a learning process. I had to learn how to, what works normally in June up there doesn't work in August. So but that's kind of fun. So the first
Yeah,
couple of days I struggled to figure it out, but I did okay.
and the weather was all good.
Weather was good. Yep. Yep, no complaints.
Oh, that's great.
Actually leaving day after tomorrow again to go up to Oregon with my dad.
Well, that's kind of neat.
Yeah.
How old's your dad?
He is 88.
Wise man.
Yeah. So yeah, this was kind of a last minute trip. I'd been doing a lot of stuff here the last couple of weeks, but when he said, "Hey, what about going up to Oregon, this place?" I'm all, well, let's do it.
Sounds good.
Hello.
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 How was your day, Tom?
Well, I'm starting. Well, you're probably even more tired than I.
So Bob, Tom and I ended up on the same plane home yesterday from San Francisco.
How interesting.
Next to it. Well, you were one row ahead of us. It was pretty funny.
And flying into San Luis Obispo? Oh, no, you guys
San
would go
Francisco to Santa Barbara.
Barbara, yeah.
It's like taking the bus home late at night.
Yes. Time-wise, is it more efficient to do the airplane than it is motor driving back up? Just curious.
From Santa Barbara?
Yeah.
Versus LA. I don't know. It's just a lot easier and nicer going in and out of Santa Barbara than LA. Getting
Yes.
into LA and then having to drive home is
Not fun.
But depends on where you're going.
Got other folks joining us.
Record.
Welcome, Laura. trying to get the dogs to cooperate. They're not interested.
All right, it's working. Cool. Be in there, I think. Ah. I kind of want to turn around the other way so that we can like have it just posted. Sure. Or just put it here. Yeah. Be posted.
Just be comfy.
You might want to mute yourself too, please, if you could. Ditmars.
Yes.
Thanks.
Boy.
It's great to see so many neighbors. This is awesome. Bob, Brad's supposed to be joining us, correct?
Yeah, in fact, he's,
Well, he's got a couple minutes. We'll wait. There he is.
Good evening.
Good evening. We'll wait one more minute till 6 here. Okay, well, I have 6 p.m. So Bob, can you go ahead and call the meeting to order, please, at 6 o'clock?
yes, I'll call the roll. President Palmer,
Here.
Vice President Farram,
Here.
Director Army. Mike, you're there somewhere. Director O'Neill.
Here.
And Director Ross.
Here.
Yeah, I'm here, Bob. I just have me on mute.
Okay, thank you. Roll
Okay.
call is complete.
Thank you. Next item is a pledge of allegiance. If you'll all join me in the pledge, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Wonderful. Well, welcome everybody. Like I said, it's great to see so many neighbors here. Appreciate your participation. Welcome. We'll move into item 4, which is director comments. So I'm going to start at the top. Director Farram.
No comments at this point, Madam
All
President.
right. Thank you. Director Army.
I have none either. Thank you.
Okay. Director Ross.
No comments.
Director O'Neill.
Surprise, no comments.
I will just briefly add that General Manager and I had a conversation today with Lars Seifert from County Environmental Health. regarding potential funding for our wells that we'll need coming up. So we got that conversation underway. And then there also, EHS is going to come to the October meeting to make a presentation and have a discussion with us on the LAMP update. So just thought you'd all be interested in that. Then moving on to item 5, public comment. Is there anyone, a member of the public here this evening who has a comment on something that's not on tonight's agenda? There'll be time for a comment on the other items on the agenda, but if there's anything that you want to speak to that's not on the agenda, now is the time. And if so, raise your hand, your Zoom hand, please. I don't see anyone. So we'll move on to 6, public discussion of the methodology used in selection of a preferred site and preferred alternative site to study as a possible location of the wastewater treatment package plant. So Bob, our general manager, is going to lead that discussion. But first, I just want to say thank you to the neighbors that are here this evening to listen and learn more. And you know, the board felt strongly at our last meeting that we needed to make sure we gave everybody the opportunity to understand how we got to this point in the process, and then also understand what the process is going forward. So, Bob, you want to take it away?
Yes, Madam Mayor, there I go again. It's historical. Madam President, members of the board and the community, tonight, the purpose of this presentation is informational. It is to outline the process that the district has used thus far in identifying potential sites for the location of wastewater treatment plant, and to enter into a dialogue with those in attendance and answer questions where we can.
So Bob, if I could, before you go any further, I should have done this at the beginning. So for this evening, Bob has a quick, not a quick, but an overview of the process. Then we'll ask for the board members if they have any comments they wish to offer, and then we'll open it up to public comment for anyone who's here who wants to speak. So appreciate you having, hold your questions till then, and we'll make sure we get to you during the public comment period. So just a procedural interjection there. Thanks, Bob. Go ahead.
Okay, to pick it up again, as most of you know, the CSD was formed in 2018. It was formed by an overwhelming vote of the electorate. Just a second, if I could. Hello? Huh. I'm sorry about that. Who's this?
Must be somebody trying to get in.
Yeah. Let me get that passcode for you and I'll just text it. And then we'll go from there.
It's weird.
Okay. If you can just bear with me while I text this.
Yeah, we couldn't vote.
Amongst them.
Yeah, we weren't able to vote.
Actually, I can give that to you if you don't mind.
And then for those of you who are on remotely, if you can mute your microphones, please. And then we can unmute you or unmute if you want to speak, but that just helps prevent background noise and allow everybody to hear. So thank you. We need some music. So Bob, you're muted. Bob, you're muted.
There I go.
Yeah, and also it looks like the passcode was wrong. Someone just texted or messaged that. So just hopefully that doesn't continue to be a problem.
Hopefully not. What I'm going to do is if I'm trying to get the screen to share.
Well, you had it up before.
I'm going to email this individual copy of the agenda. And hopefully that should resolve the issue.
Well, not if the passcode's wrong.
Well, on the agenda, I'm fairly certain that it's correct. We've got a lot of people that are in.
Okay. All right. Or send them the link to the website. At any rate.
Yeah, if you just click the link on from the agenda on the
Website.
website, that's how I got it. So yeah.
Same.
And maybe we can make that announcement. If anybody else calls in, just take the link to the website and that should
Okay.
get you in.
Well, they would be calling you, I think. So
Okay.
anyway.
Sorry about that. Let me just get this one email off and then I'll be right back.
While he's doing that, I'm happy to announce we'll be back in-person meetings next month. So we're going to start meeting at St. Mark's for the remainder of the year at least.
There.
All right. Bob, are you bringing it back up or are you emailing?
I'm emailing him.
Okay.
I just have one more.
Thank you.
Bob, in the meantime, do you want to send the slides to Ms. Palmer?
Yeah, I can do that.
And then I can share.
All right. I'll do that right away.
Then you just have to.
I already sent the slides to you if you want to look at
Oh,
that.
you did? Oh, okay. I just was in other meetings. All right. Thank you. Okay. And then Bob, you just need to give me screen sharing,
I'll do that.
please. Thanks for bearing with us, everyone.
Okay, you should be able to share your screen.
There we go. Can you see it? There we go. Can everyone see it now? I don't see anyone nodding. Help me
Yeah,
out.
that's good.
All right. So Bob, are you gonna, do you want me to pick up where you left off?
Yes. Yeah.
Start over?
Yeah.
So it's, most of you know, because I think most of you are on the call or here when the district was formed. I mean, we formed it to provide a funding mechanism for building and operating a wastewater facility system, and also a system that will allow us to reclaim the water, not just, anyway, a system that will allow for reclamation as well as collection. And this is all driven by our need to improve the groundwater quality, right, in the district based on our historic water quality problems. Okay, Bob, you good to
Yeah, I'll
go?
pick it up from here.
Okay.
The project components that support the mission are outlined on the current slide. Obviously, it's to develop requirements for wastewater collection and treatment. And it is also to implement a program that will improve our water quality. We've already undertaken and implemented a groundwater monitoring program. We're currently working on obtaining funding to design, construct, and obviously operate the system. This is an extensive undertaking and an effort that is ongoing, and it's being done to minimize the costs to the property owners and residents of the community. Designing, yes.
Sorry to interrupt. Apparently there are some people trying to get into the meeting.
Okay.
Please admit them. Thank you.
Take care of that.
Yeah, and then Bob, if it works better, we can have one of us take over. I just want to make sure everybody who's waiting gets in.
And I'll try and keep an eye on that. Design and build collection system and treatment plant. That's really where we are at this point, is at the very beginning of this process. And I think it's important to stress that. Later on tonight, we're going to be considering, or the board's going to be considering a contract with a potential design engineer. And that's a very important element as to where we are. Obviously, you know, the treatment plant construction will take place over a number of years. It's probably going to take us 3 to 4 years to complete. And once that's done, the district would begin operating the treatment plant and collection system. Okay, next slide. You know, where we've been thus far in terms of property selection, the board actually began this process about the same time that the CSD was formed. They've looked at a number of sites over this period as they were brought to their attention one way or another, and in fact have acquired lease rights or to a right-of-way piece of property that is up in the northern part of the city and adjacent to Maddie's property. Their effort is to try and make sure they've got the right sites for the project. So they went and decided to get fresh eyes to ensure that we weren't overlooking anything, and that's how they came up with UPC. They looked at quite a wide range of projects, of sites. They looked at all parcels within a mile radius as much as they could. The next slide. So essentially what happened with the UPC is they provided a list of 17 sites that made some basic requirements. What happened from that point on, the board, in conjunction with a project management committee, actually took a look at how to further weight the 17 sites that were provided by UPC. As you can see here, there are a number of the weights increase certain categories are identified as being more weighted than others. Some of those, for instance, are site availability, site physical constraints, having good access. These were some of the key ones. And one of those I want to mention, make sure I mention, is elevation compared to district. Obviously, the fewer lift stations that are required in the system, and the more the system actually is gravity fed, the more efficient it'll be and the less costly. Next slide. As a result of this weighting, decision matrix outlined here identifies the 5 top sites using this weighted characteristic. As you'll note, there's quite a bit of difference between the top 3 sites, then it falls off dramatically to other sites. That doesn't mean that those sites are going to be excluded from further review. It just means that, you know, with developing a project like this, we really needed a starting point. And this is really what this whole process has been. It's identified a place to start, and the properties that are developed as either the preferred site or the alternative site are being referred on for further review and investigation. That will be a real proofing as to whether these sites in fact will work or not. And it is quite possible that any of those other sites on the original listing from UPC will also could come back into consideration. It's a way of prioritizing the work. Next slide, please. The 2 sites that have been identified, one is the preferred site, which is located to the south of town. And again, one of the reasons that it was located there, it is at the south of town. It is just adjacent to the district boundaries, but obviously developing a system that would be gravity fed, certainly this would have those advantages. Also, the alternative site, both of these sites are, you know, greater than the half acre that's considered as to be a minimal size for the siting. Next slide, please. At this point, I'm going to ask Ross to discuss the fact that, you know, comments have come up that, yes, the preferred site is outside of the current district boundaries, but Ross, if you wouldn't mind discussing how applicable that is to our current organization.
Sure. The concern raised is that the siting has to be within the boundaries of the district, and that's not required under the special district law. The special district law is concerned with where the services are being provided. So the fact that the wastewater treatment plant may be located outside the boundaries of the district, as long as the service that's being provided is only within the boundaries of the district, then it's consistent with the community services district law. And that's set forth. The fact that the district can own property within or outside the district is set forth on the slide at 61060. With respect to the district's powers and the argument that the district is limited by its enacted power to provide wastewater treatment within the district, that's correct. And that's set forth in section 61100. And specifically, that is subsection B, which allows for the collection, treatment, and disposal of sewage, wastewater, recycled water, and stormwater. Importantly, 61100B states, and this is the district's activated power, is that it can do those things in the same manner as a sanitary district formed under the Health and Safety Code. And under the Health and Safety Code, section 6512, there's no restriction that the wastewater treatment plant itself has to be within the boundaries. Because again, as an explainer to members of the public who are probably not familiar with this, special districts are limited power entities. They're not like cities and they're not like counties. They can only do what they are authorized to do under the law as at the time and per their creation resolution. So when the voters vote to create a special district, it can only do what the voters approve that it can do. And when this district was created, the activated power was wastewater treatment under 61100 subsection B. So that's all the district can do is wastewater treatment, recycled water as set forth in that government code provision. So that's where that power comes from. It doesn't have the same powers as a city or a county. And if it wants to exercise additional powers, or if it wants to provide its activated power, its service outside its boundaries, then it has to go through additional legal processes to get permission to do so. It can't just enter into agreements, for example, to provide wastewater treatment services to another community outside the boundaries of the district, because the special district law is concerned with the provision of services. So there is no restriction on the location of the wastewater treatment plant being located within the district's boundaries. Therefore, if in the end, if the board ultimately decides to move forward with the project at a site location that is outside the boundaries, it is consistent with the special district law that I've enumerated and with the sanitary district law in the health and safety code, which I've also identified.
Thank you, Ross. Okay, Lisa, if we can move along. The district is focused on being a good neighbor. I think the biggest part of this is, to a certain degree, the elimination of the special problems area designation for Los Olivos. Obviously, this has been an issue for several years. It has limited what property owners are able to do with their property. And simply by converting the system from a septic to sewer project or way of dealing with the with effluent, you're going to improve the water quality and ultimately the water basin itself. And so we'll do this by implementing a cost-effective wastewater treatment. And I can tell you, if you listen, in fact, to the next item on the agenda, which is the retention of a engineer and for design purposes, the water quality is going to be improved by that process to what they call Title 22. Title 22 is about as clean as you can get and is actually almost it's potable and almost drinkable. And the other thing that we're attempting to do is as we go through this process, we're going to continue to monitor the quality of the groundwater to ensure that there are no adverse impacts. Now, relative to the design and construction of the wastewater treatment plant, the intent is to make it fit into the community regardless of which site it's selected and where it's located. And the intent is to minimize the impact to adjoining property owners. We'll be using a package plan. A package plan has a way of being very efficient and actually reduced in size. Most likely, the plan itself, that's why no more than a half an acre is actually needed for the location of the plant. It'll be enclosed to mitigate both noise and odor issues. It'll be set back from property lines and it'll be properly screened with vegetation to enhance the appearance. Every effort will be made to ensure it fits in, regardless of where it's located. Next slide. Lisa, next slide. There we go. This will give you an example of what a package plant looks like. It can be easily contained within a block wall or chain link fence with slats and vines. I've already indicated that we're going to want to do a architectural building that will enclose this. So as it says, it'll look rural and fit in with the historic nature of Los Olivos. As indicated, the odor attenuation, as noted here on this slide, will offer odor scrubbing process, and the remainder of the plant is highly aerobic and does not generate odor. The other thing is that sound attenuation. These are very quiet and efficient treatment packages. If you were to hear it or be adjacent to it, the decibel level is normally about 60, which is normal conversation at a distance of 5 feet. So the intent is to try and minimize it as much as possible. This is just a picture of a package plant under consideration, under construction. As you'll note that it's being enclosed, and it just gives you an idea of what that construction might look like while it's underway. And again, it'll be done in such a way to mitigate odors. Next slide. Actually, the path forward is as I have mentioned, this is actually just the very, very beginning of the process. The board has indicated that while it is essentially important to make sure essential to be sure this project is done in a complete way, but it also wants to make sure that it's done in a timely way, and will be undertaking a design that will eventually in the spring result in a complete project, at least from a design point of view. You'll be able to see where the collection system is outlined and how the structure will work, but more importantly, it will determine the suitability of the preferred sites. And it could very well be that at the end of this process, the site may work, it may not, and we'll continue to seek out different sites as they tend to present themselves through the design and environmental review process. As I mentioned, this is really a beginning point. As I've said, you have to start somewhere. And that's what the board has done with this selection process. You know, to allay some of the concern that community members have, we have been talking with manufacturers about doing a tour of a very similar operating package plant that will be arranged at some time in the near future, so the residents can look at a close by plant and determine and see how one of these actually functions in a real world setting. So as I've said, we're in the beginning of the process. That is essentially the selection process that I've outlined is what we've done thus far. We have a long way to go. Each point along the way will be a public process and subject to including participation by the entire community. I can say as an employee of the district that, and having listened to the board, they want to make sure they get this right. And they want to make sure they get this right for the benefit of the entire community. And that's what the effort is about, to solve a problem in an efficient, effective, and an environmentally safe way. So that, Madam President, concludes my presentation. I think it would be important.
Lisa, you're muted.
I know, I just figured that out. Thank you. I was just saying on the last point on the tour, we're definitely, going to make that happen in the next 60 days, because regardless of where the site ends up, I think it's important for not only all the residents, but the board members as well to visit one and see how it works and how it integrates into the community in a place that's similar to ours. So Bob, thank you. With that, I'll look for any board member comments, and then we'll take public comment after that. So I'm trying to find where my people are. I think I see all of you. Director O'Neill, any comments for the good of the order?
Of course I do. May not be for the good of the order. Thank you guys for putting together those slides real quick. Lisa, if you don't mind, can you leave this slide up there right now, the path forward?
Sure, it's up, yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Basically on slide 8, it talked about the district is not just that the district is a good neighbor. I kind of disagree with that, because we are your neighbors. We're not just good neighbors, we're neighbors. And we volunteered to do this to save us all money. That is when it gets down to it, I know I speak for a lot of this stuff. It has to, for a lot of the members here is we are here to make sure that this is done right the first time at the most cost effective and way to go. We want to stay here, and it's not like we're coming from outside. And I'm just so pleased to see the level of attendance here. So thank you. One of the big things again is to save us costs, but one of the other big deals is to remove the stigma of our special problems district. I became very involved in this because my insurance was crazy, and I kept looking into it and found out that we're being surcharged huge for a special problems district that we can actually do something about. And that's one of my things going on. But when I get down to it, I really want to stress on slides 4 and 5 that all the options still remain on the table. We are under this topic here about the methodology for the selection. This is designed as we intended it to be, to do 2 things. One is to give us a mechanism so that we could pursue additional grants and funding and low cost loans and everything we can do. We need to come up with the first part of this stuff is something I call a BOD, which is a basis of design. Then we'll move on to, let's just call it a 30% design, and then a 60%. At the point of basis of design, we'll be able to use a large amount of that information to pursue additional grants and funds. And that is literally what we're going to do. That will allow us to receive potentially matching funds and be able to bring down the cost to all of us, okay? But the second thing is we have to start someplace, okay? We need to start the design phase and move forward. That design phase needs to have candidate sites. So we went out and as Ross and these guys, as everybody was indicating here, we went out third party and selected, basically 2 sites to move forward with on the design. The slide up on 12 says, hey, this is based on, all the available sites. We have not selected 2. We're just moving forward with those 2. Many different reasons, but these references and these potential sites will be looked at during the design and after the design. And the 2 other important factors of this, we only anticipate the environmental. The environmental actions here in Santa Barbara County are costly and time consuming. Plus, we have the federal requirements with potentially the Corps of Engineers, and we all know how that could be time delayed. But if we can get the grants and the fundings down, we can move forward. Okay. And again, that is our one of our priorities out there. The environmental, as I talked about, was very expensive, but we also have a huge consideration with the hydro and geological aspects of where we're going. Those two aspects are not complete. Those reports have not matured. And the district has gone ahead to use county funds and funds that we've selected to get these very expensive projects done. This is not at a cost of us, but it is a key component of the systems. So again, we have not just the technical design, and we have the environmental and hydrogeological, but as a community member here, we know it's all going to come down to the economic aspects of this. And if we can't do it right the first time for the best money, okay, we're wasting our times. We're all volunteers here. So again, the design needs to start someplace. We need a mechanism to go after funds. And as far as I'm concerned, the most economically viable thing will be the one that we stand behind. Thank you for letting me talk.
Great, thanks, Brian. Excuse me, Director Army, anything from you?
The only thing I want to add to what Brian just said is, and Brian, correct me if I'm wrong, you know, just because we're doing the design phase to get our funding and our grants and all this stuff does not mean that we can't change the design even after we get funding, but we have to have something in place so they can say this is a viable project. And so the design, 30% design for you that aren't in construction and don't know, that's just basically lines on plans, showing grade, showing that, okay, this will work this way. 60% design is more detailed, more utility conflicts, all the other stuff going forward to where you could actually almost start building the job. But just so you know that things will change. If the environmental comes back and says this isn't going to work, it's not going to hold up the funding process, but it will allow the design to change. That's it.
Great, thank you. All right. Director Ross, I'm going across my grid here.
I just wanted to mention that we're very interested in reducing the stigma of what it means to have a wastewater treatment plant. I know in the early days, I saw a lot of plants that were large and there was an odor to them and not nice to look at. But for a small town like Los Olivos, we have a package plant that is not going to be anything like the treatment plants of old or even large treatment plants, but it's going to be hopefully not even noticeable. And we've heard very positive comments from one of our local manufacturers of these plants. And so I'm very confident that we can be good neighbors even with a wastewater treatment plant.
Thanks, Brad. Director Fayram, thoughts?
Thank you, Madam President. I just, nothing much more to add than what my colleagues have just said, other than if you go out and look at, I think it's on Los Osos Valley Road, what the town of Los Osos did for their wastewater treatment plant. I actually toured that plant. That's not what we're going to have here, nor if you go out on Black Road by the city of Santa Maria, that's not what we're going to have. It's much more compact. And so I think the idea of finding a similar installation in place and looking at it is will be very helpful. And that's all I have, Madam President.
Thank you. I think the only additional comment I have is it took me a bit of time as a non-engineer, non-technical person in the group, to wrap my head around the idea of at least identifying a couple sites that are reasonable candidates to get us started in the basis of design. Because until we have something that's, I don't even want to say a placeholder, but a possibility, we can't get started on designing the system for the entire district. So having these two alternatives, if you will, gives us the ability to start moving forward with that, designing the system for the entire district. Where the site eventually ends up, we need the engineers who are the experts in designing a system to help us analyze that. So, and to Brian's point, we can't go get additional funding until we have some basis of design that says, here's the general idea of what we're looking to create or build here. Will you help us pay to build it? So while we're moving forward with the design element, we can take that initial basis and go out and begin to shop it for state, federal, local funds. So I trust that the experts we've designed to work with us on the system will come back to us with their evaluation that will either prove out that these are viable or they'll recommend other side alternatives. So that's what I have to offer at this point.
Can we ask questions right now?
Can I ask first? I think what I'd rather do, if we could, is see how many hands there are of folks who want to speak. Can you raise your Zoom hand for me so I can wrangle? Okay, there's a real hand from Kevin. Thank you. I see Bill. Thank you. Anybody else?
Yes, I'm on the phone and I also would like to speak. I sent a formal request.
Okay. So I'm counting 3 speakers. So I think what I'd like to do is I'll go in order here. Kevin, I think you had your hand up first. And if I could, we're recording the meeting, but if you could state your name and your address for the record, so as we move forward, we know who folks know who we're talking to and where you are.
All right. My name is Kevin Yakub and my address is 2697 Santa Barbara Avenue. I actually live down off Keegan Drive.
Got it.
So I have 2 questions. I only had one, but one came up after the last couple of discussions. When you say that it's going to be, the first question is when you say it's going to be a compact system, have we gotten input from somebody that gave us somewhat of an estimate on what the system needs to be sized to make that claim? I mean, do we know for sure it can be compact?
So that's one question. Why don't you give us your questions and then we'll see how we can address them. I think the short answer is yes, but we'll keep going.
Yeah, the more important question for me is, I unfortunately today had to replace out my septic tank because it was corroded and I couldn't wait for the 3 to 5 years to get this treatment plant put in. Once this thing goes live, what's going to be the implementation plan? I mean, are people going to be forced to implement right away? Is there a time period to wait? And the reason I'm asking is I'm probably going to sell my home before the 3 to 5 year period, and I'd like potential homeowners to know what's going to happen.
Okay, that's a good question. I think the best thing to do is get the questions out on the table and then we could come back where that is something we're addressing and actually, well, anyway, so you want to know what the interim plan is essentially. So if you were going to sell, what that means as far as having to hook up. And I think, Bob, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm going to violate the rule I just set up. We're not going to know the time frame for hookup until we have a system designed and we know what it costs.
Yeah,
finance.
My question is, once that system is live, do the homeowners have to, hook up into that system, all of them right away? Is there some time frame? Do they have options?
Well, go ahead, Bob.
Yeah, we're working on that. In fact, with the EHS right now, the Environmental Health Service with the county. In fact, they'll be coming to our meeting next month. And part of what they'll be covering is just how do we make that all work if you agree to hook up when the system is available, there may be certain benefits that will accrue to you as a property owner, and those will have realistic dollar amounts associated with them. Beyond that, all I can say is, we'll work through this as fairly and equitably as possible. For us, ultimately, it makes sense to have the majority of the folks on the system as soon as possible. But we'll be taking into the account that, it'll be done at some time, and at some time you're going to be expected to hook up. I know that that's a lot, but I'd encourage you to come next month. We'll have EHS here, and they'll be able to help answer some of those questions.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Kevin. Did you have another question?
No.
Okay, thanks. Bill, how about you? Please.
We've heard, Bill Reynolds, 2273 Alamo Pintado Road. We've heard from one of the board members that there are sites in Los Osos and in Santa Maria that it is not going to be. And the fact that Maddie's project is not online yet. And even with folks staying there, there's going to be about 90 employees and their cars impacting the community. I'm wondering if, in speaking with the manufacturer of the package plant, are there any actual package plants within the range that we're talking about, the size that we're talking about, in a relatively reasonable distance to go look at? Or is this, since the folks or the manufacturers have indicated their confidence in it, I'm assuming that comes from having actual plants in place and it works. So are there plants that are of a similar size somewhere that can be visited?
Madam President, I'll take that answer. First of all, yes, we have been having discussions with a manufacturer that has put these plants in areas that are accessible to us. I should note that there'll still be a competitive process that we'll have to go through before we select a final manufacturer. Part of that will be to ensure that the impacts, that'll be part of the competitive process, is the ability of these package plants to limit their impacts to adjoining areas. I'm aware that there is one plant in northern SLO County that may be available to us to look at. In terms of sizing, these package plants are built and constructed to the type of flow demand. So our flow demand will take in everything that is existing as well as what Maddie's will produce. That's considered as part of the flow evaluation. And these are relative, and to assure you of one thing, you're still a small community. You've got 440 folks that ultimately will be using this system. Your flows aren't large. They're easily accommodated with a relatively small package plant.
So Bill, we will be organizing a field trip, if you will, to the SLO County site, and or potentially another one. We're working on that. So that'll be a public meeting that people can attend. I'm happy to organize a bus or whatever if we want to do that. So
Is it possible to have a representative from that plant at,
Sure,
if not the October meeting, a November meeting?
Yes.
Simply as a comp, or as a comparable, it would be helpful also to hear any impact statements from surrounding area within the community. And while this obviously is a closed, it sounds like it's a closed system to some degree. And obviously we'll all learn more about it, but it would be helpful to have someone there who's actually operating one of these plants to answer questions.
Yeah, we will make sure that happens. I think we all have the same questions, right? I mean,
Sure.
we can look at slides and we can talk about it, but we all need to go see it and smell it and hear it and kick the tires. So
Sure.
I'm a big fan of that and proponent, and we'll make that happen.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks for being here. Paul? I can't unraise your hand. Bob can though.
Great, because I probably wouldn't be able to figure it out. So my name is Paul Rohrer. I live at 2411 Alamo Pintado. I guess a lot of things have been said so far, and I think that many of them have been incorrect. So let's start with the first. Director O'Neill said that the board wants to do things right. I appeared here a month ago, and I said, if you want to do things right, you need to go back and review and create a record so that you're not making a decision in an arbitrary and capricious manner. Because I'm a neighbor. I want this to be done as quickly and easily as possible for our neighbors. And I came, didn't say nothing, just said it. Now, the response was to push through a resolution that stated that the chosen site will be the Little Creek site, right? Or that it was the preferred site at this moment. It's the site chosen for step, right? So that's not in question. It's in your minutes. You've already adopted it. What I do think is true, though, is Mr. O'Neill went on to say that this is likely about money and that they want to spend the least amount of money. And I tend to agree with that. And I would imagine that the reason that you would put the plant outside of your district where it's affecting people who are not members of your district is so that you could do it cheaper, right? If you were really going to do that smell-free, bug-free, great plant, you'd probably put it downtown where the people who need it and use it and will benefit from it are. However, you're shipping it outside of downtown. Now, I really just want to focus on the decision's already been made. So all of this stuff here is kabuki, it's theater, and it does nothing to cure you can't go back and ex post facto cure something that was done wrong in the first place. And what was done wrong in the first place is the determination was made outside of the law in an arbitrary and capricious manner. Now let's get to the law. Mr. Trindle's legal analysis is deeply unsatisfying. He takes creative license, which is not something that we like in the law, by including provisions in the law that don't exist, like saying, that section, 61060 deals with usage, which it doesn't. But by going on and ignoring parts of the law that put limits that they don't like. For example, the law dealing with the jurisdictional boundaries says that a district, so it says within its boundaries, I'm just going to read them, right? Within its boundaries, a district may do any of the following: collect, treat, or dispose of sewage. So it says you can do this in your district. It doesn't say you can do it outside of your district, it says you can do it inside. Now, Mr. Trindle goes on to say, well, if we look at what's sewage facility districts could do, which are different from the community districts, right? If we looked at the sanitary districts, then we'd have different powers. Well, that's true, except that the community district law says, well, you don't get the powers, right? If this law conflicts with the powers that you would have under the sanitary district law, you don't get to have them. And in fact, it does. And if you think about this, it's really logical that it would do that. If you were allowed to sort of willy-nilly ship your excrement outside of your district, every district would do that. No one would say, oh, the people who vote for us and who are going to approve the funding for it, we'll put it in the center of town with them. No, you'd ship it outside. And I think that's what the law intended to deal with. Then further, Mr. Trindle makes the point, well, you could go to LAFCO and get a resolution to control this, to put the Little Creek site within the district. But that's like saying, if I went to my bankers and said, I could win the lottery. I mean, I could, I'd like it. You wouldn't see me anymore, move to the south of France, but my bankers are probably not going to bank on that, right? Because they're going to say, well, you could, but you haven't. But here, even more than that, I at least bought a lotto ticket. You guys haven't done the first thing to expand the district, and you haven't studied the consequences of expanding the district in terms of cost and in terms of time. So it's really a specious argument. I could go on, but I don't want to overextend my welcome, and thank you for your consideration.
Thanks, Paul. And I know if you have any additional written comments you want to submit, I know we have what you submitted earlier today and previously, so thank you for those. Sorry, I believe there is call-in user 1. I don't know how to address you.
Yeah, hi.
So if you can state your name and your address, I'd appreciate it.
Sure. My name is Jamshid Madahi. I'm a cardiologist. I'm professor of medicine at UCLA. I purchased my property at 2399 Alamo Pintado Road over 10 years ago and subsequently developed a vineyard on it. I want to begin by saying that I strongly support your project, but frankly, I'm quite concerned about the way this project has unfolded. And here are my concerns. You have designated this site on Alamo Pintado Road as a preferred site for your sewage treatment facility, but my legal sources tell me that you do not have the authority to designate such a site outside your boundary. Furthermore, your decision appears to be arbitrary. You engaged a consulting firm, UPC, to rank 17 potential sites. The Little Creek site was number 6 on their priority list, but somehow the parameters were arbitrarily altered by the board, and Little Creek site miraculously became the choice number 1. You already accepted it by voting on it, and it is already in your minutes. I'm concerned that you have not been transparent in this process. I and quite a few neighbors did not receive notice of this project. I just had to hear it indirectly from others. I can see this site from my backyard and my bedroom. How come I didn't receive any notice of what is happening in my neighborhood? You have voted on it without input from those who are directly affected by it. The Little Creek property is in the middle of a farming community surrounded by vineyards, orchards, and wells. I personally have 2 wells close to Alamo Pintado Road that supply water to my vineyard and are used for my domestic use. The environmental impact of the sewage treatment facility is immense. It will affect the water quality that we drink and use for our crop. I know that you plan to get an environmental impact report, but I am deeply concerned that this process will also be arbitrary. Well, in conclusion, I urge you to formally rescind your decision and remove the Little Creek site from consideration for this project. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Doctor. And I just want to be sure, Bob, perhaps you can follow up and make sure the doctor was on the mailing list, and if not, that he does receive notice, because we did notice all the property owners within 500 feet of both proposed sites.
Madam President, just in regards to that, we actually worked with the County of Santa Barbara, who in fact provided us with the assessor's information, and that's what we used. We provided them with the parameters, and they sent us the listing of parcels to be contacted. Relative to the last speaker, what I would appreciate he would do is if he could just send us an email with his correct spelling of his name and address. I'll be more than glad to check it out and be sure that he receives any future notices.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, is there anyone else who has a comment on the site? So, I mean, the site selection process, but also, well, anyway, on this agenda item. This has been great discussion so far. Anybody else? Just want to make sure I'm not missing anyone. I don't see any hands going once. Thank you all for your comments, and we certainly understand your concerns. And I'm sorry, who just spoke up?
Hi, my name is Letty Obledo, and I live at 2279 Alamo Pintado Road.
There you are. Okay.
Yeah.
Hi there.
Hi. Yeah, first of all, I'm glad to be speaking here tonight. One thing that I find interesting is the lack of transparency in this entire project. A lot of us were not notified until recently of your intent to do this. You are not being good neighbors by putting this in our area. I don't think that way. Also, you imply that you're trying to reduce your funding, but yet you're asking the government, whether it's the city, the county, whatever, to pay for this treatment plant, which means essentially we're going to be responsible for paying for that. This is our community as well. We are, if you consider us all neighbors, then we need to be included in this decision, not just you people. And so what I resent is that we weren't given sufficient notification. We weren't given sufficient information, and we don't want this here. I mean, you have to understand, those of us who are going to be primarily affected, who are near to this plant, do not want this here. And I don't even know if you're going to really take that into consideration. Do any of you live by here? That's what I want to know. Do you live within 500 feet of where this plant is proposed? Can you answer me that now?
Well, I'm sorry.
Yeah, are you within 500 feet? Do you live nearby? Are you within an acre?
You don't have to scream.
Oh, that's okay. This is not screaming from me.
Well, you're getting a little aggressive.
Yeah, that I am, because I'm very, very angry at your decision-making processes here.
Well, if I could, we all live in Los Olivos, right? We're all neighbors. We all have a vested interest in solving this problem. We all knew that eventually we're going to have to decide where this goes, a plant goes, in order to solve our wastewater problem. So that's one. Number two is we meet the third Wednesday of every month. Our agendas are online, all our materials online. I encourage you to, get engaged in the process. We love having folks here when we have meetings where we don't have any members of the public. So we are, we're elected officials. It's a public body. All of our material is online for you to see at any hour of the day you choose to review. I'm sorry that you feel, otherwise, but I encourage you to get involved in the process going forward. So thanks for your comments.
Essentially, you're not part of Los Olivos. You have to understand that. We're not in your district.
I understand. Well, that's why we had this meeting tonight. That's why we noticed the neighbors. I'm sorry if there are neighbors within 500 feet that didn't get noticed. That wasn't our intent. We got the data from the county. We rely on the parcel data. So
what I want to know, though, is you estimated the number of households that will be contributing their effluent to the plant. So what happens when you start adding other businesses to Los Olivos? Have you considered that in the size of the plant that you are constructing? Because with this additional service, you can bet there are going to be more businesses who are going to want to come to Los Olivos. So basically, they're going to invest in your community, not in ours.
Well, the short answer is yes, we have. We had to do what's called a load study that looks at the entire community, what's there today, what the potential is, and then the facility gets sized to that. So I'm happy to send that to you, or Mr. Peralt can send that to you if you're interested. So I'm gonna, I see one more hand, and I'm sorry, it says Sammy, but thank you for your comments. Spencer Bailey, hand up. Spencer, you're muted. I don't know if you're speaking or not.
Hi, can you hear me?
There you are.
All right. I just wanted to reiterate what the past three speakers have said. I'm definitely not too enthusiastic about this wastewater plant next to our property, which is located at 2310 Alamotado Road. As the past two speakers have said, we've also had a little problem with notice. One of our neighbors did put something on our gate, which allowed us to know this meeting was taking place. So I just found that out about 3 hours ago. And I wanted to just put on the record that very not happy about it. And I did have a question, perhaps your council can answer. If this district, if this proposed site fell outside of your district, when this vote was taking place, how would people be properly noticed that this was a potential site for a wastewater treatment plant? Thank you.
Thank you. And Spencer, I just, again, want to reiterate, we made a good faith effort. Maybe it was imperfect. We'll have to go back and look, but we fully noted that what we asked the county for was the records of every parcel owner within 500 feet of both of these properties. And we sent notice out to those, whatever mailing address is on file with the county, it was 10 days in advance of this meeting. So I just want everyone to know that was what we did.
May I ask, how did you come up with 500 feet criterion? You could choose 50 feet. Why 500 feet? If you really have good intentions, you would notify a wider part of the community than to have another arbitrary decision to choose 500 feet for notifying people.
Madam President, if I could, just so you know, the 500 feet is typical noticing that takes place in planning decisions, and that's why the 500 feet was used.
Right, I know that that is used for when one wants to build a building or wants to develop a vineyard, but when you have such an important project, it would really show good faith if you make an effort to get the community that is affected by directly involved, and that wasn't done.
Thank you. Spencer, your hand's still up. Did you have anything else to say?
Oh, I'm sorry. I just, no, but
Okay.
My question was with regards to when this did come to vote, because I do remember when this was voted on, but because this is outside of because this preferred site was outside of your district, even if it is included, how would people known when they voted that this could be a potential site? Thank you.
Right, to clarify, Spencer, if I'm not incorrect, I think what you're saying is the members of the community voted to form the district, but the people who are not members of the district were not aware of the vote on the site selection. Am I getting that right?
Correct, especially since it wouldn't have been considered to be within the jurisdiction of where you could put a treatment plant.
Your point's taken. So thank you for that. And again, we looked at, based on the board's process, we didn't know what site the board was going to select, right? Based on the rankings that UPC came back with and that we worked on as a group. So I see your point. That is also why we chose, though, to have an additional public information session tonight to make sure that folks were aware. So, all right, I think we'll wrap up public comment unless there's anyone new who has something for the board. Laura, I see you. Oh, you're on mute, Laura.
Okay.
There you go.
Yeah. Laura Lippincott, 2510 Santa Barbara Avenue. I'm just wondering, I had heard, again, this could just be total rumor, but that Mark Herthel had offered a couple of these preferred sites free. Could that have bumped it up to be to the top of your preferred list?
Well, cost of the property is a factor. If you looked at how we weighted the factors, that was, all of those, if we had a willing property owner is a factor, right? So that was an element, but there are also a number of other attractive
features,
characteristics, if you would, of the property, as our general manager outlined earlier.
Sorry. One last question. Do you have any idea of this package plant? Like how many feet would you say? 40 feet by 50 feet or 200 by 3? I mean, do you have any idea what, so we can kind of imagine it?
Bob?
All I can say about that is that it's relatively small. I know that and maybe I can call on Mr. Ellison. He's here, he's representing the manufacturer. Troy, can you respond to that in terms of the size plant we're looking at? I know it's relatively small. Do you know what that footprint might look like?
Yeah, based on the original sizing that was provided in the analysis, you would be somewhere right around a 30-foot by about a 70-foot footprint for the tankage. And then you'd have a little bit of square footage for some additional ancillaries.
Thank
you.
And I'm sorry, one last thing. Is it possible to put a cover over it? So if somebody lives up in the hill, which would be looking down on this site, that they would see like a barn, like your PowerPoint said, instead of seeing a bunch of machinery. I mean, that's not my house, but I'm thinking about the people on the hill above it.
Well, I can answer that. It can be done that way, and it'll be part of the project review, certainly. The only thing I can say to that is there's always the potential when you fully enclose the plant, it does increase the cost somewhat.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Laura. All right, and then I see one more hand from Karen.
Hi, actually, Vince Hugo, 2721 Santa Barbara Avenue. And my question is, I know from the beginning, we talked about there were data collections for what the real water problem is, how contaminated is the water table. And my understanding is that we're really still relying on data that was collected in like 1955. I see in the PowerPoint today that when we go forward with the design that we'll be doing continual monitoring and understand what the impact of it would be. But my question, I guess, remains even before we start talking about a potential site or construction, do we really know that the old data that we had to start from is still valid?
The issue is the last testing actually was done in 1977, which is a few years later than the 1950s. It did show a high concentration of nitrates, and that's how we got to be designated as a special problem area. In terms of monitoring, there's a great deal that we still need to know, and that will all be part of the design process. Ultimately, there will GSI, who is our water contractor, will conduct a series of monitorings. And it could be that those monitorings will tell us something different. If that's the case, it'll have to be taken into account as a part of the design.
That's all.
Okay, and then I do notice, Catherine, I don't know if these are from, I think these are from you or Paul. You had some questions in here about the notice.
I
would just, Catherine Lohmeyer Rohr, where I'm at 2411 Alamo Pintado Road. And I would just reiterate that an earlier speaker asked whether any of the members of the board live within 500 feet or even 1 acre of the selected site, and we didn't get a response on that, and that's okay. But it does, the recurring theme I'm hearing from the board members is a real concern with cost cutting. And that necessarily, you have to understand, gives rise to an implication for the people who are going to be near your plant, that your goal is cost cutting. And so you have an obligation, not just to your voters, but actually to the community as a whole, the broader community, to be making decisions both about construction, but also about maintenance. Over years and years and years and years of time. And so it is perhaps short-sighted to be trying to figure out the cheapest way to do this and the furthest from your voters and the people who are going to actually have to pay for it, and really factor some of those considerations in before you plow ahead with this decision-making.
Thank you, Catherine. Appreciate it. All right. So Vince, I think you're done. I just see the hands that are up and I think you all have spoken. Okay. Well, thank you everyone for your participation and your comments. You know, I encourage you to stay engaged as we move forward. As we discussed, this is, I mean, these sites are the basis for us to move forward with an initial design and begin to understand from a study standpoint what is feasible and frankly unfeasible as well as feasible from an environmental and a technical and an economic standpoint. So those are all factors we have to balance, right, as we move forward. And we, as Bob alluded to earlier, one of our later items this evening is to talk about preparing to get a contract in place to be able to begin that study and design process. So I encourage you all to stay engaged as we move forward. And we will also, particularly as long as there are properties that are under consideration that are either adjacent to the district or are in district and have neighbors that may be outside the district, we'll continue to keep you on our mailing list. And if you have anybody else that you want, you know, please to include, please send that via email to our general director, if you would. All right. Okay, so we're wrapping up item 6. We have a healthy public discussion about that, so thank you. Moving on to 7, the administrative agenda.
Yes, Madam President, the administrative agenda consists of minutes and invoices submitted for payment. Normally, these are acted upon with a single action unless a board member or a member of the public chooses to request that one of these items be pulled. So these items are submitted for your approval, and staff is ready to move forward as the board desires.
Madam President?
Yes.
I would request that we take item A and B separately, as I'll be abstaining from item A as I was not in attendance at that meeting. So
that's fine. Thank you. Any other comments on this? All right, and I'm going to request that B3, the M&S invoice, be removed. That needs to be reviewed and have some corrections made before it can be approved. So I'll entertain a motion then for 7A, the meeting minutes. Which
comment before we approve them?
Sure.
I'd just like to go on record here as on page 2 of 3 of the minutes last month. A motion was made by Director O'Neill to use the preferred site and the alternate site as noted on the agenda staff report and advanced them to the preliminary design phase. It was seconded and the motion was approved. Just note that this was advanced to the preliminary design. This was not a selection aspect. And this preliminary design, as has been stated, will go through many renditions before a selected site is chosen. So with that, I'd make a motion to approve the the minutes from last month. And
Well, I think they need to be amended then to accurately reflect. So if you either want to propose an amendment or we can bring them back after they're amended.
my statement is that these are correct as read.
Okay.
No amendment needs.
Okay. All right. So I still need a motion.
I'd like to put a motion aside to approve the minutes from last month.
Okay.
I'll
Director.
second that motion.
Ross seconds it.
All right. It's a roll call, please.
Yes, President Palmer,
Aye.
Vice President Fayram,
Abstain.
Director Ross,
Aye.
Director O'Neill,
Aye.
Director Army.
Aye.
Motion passes 4-0-1 with one abstention.
Okay, thank you. Then 7B.
7B there should be a motion to approve with the exception of the MNS invoice.
Madam President, so moved.
Fayram moves.
I'll second that.
Ross seconds. Okay, roll call vote. President Palmer.
Aye.
Vice President Fayram.
Aye.
Director Ross.
Aye.
Director O'Neill.
Aye.
Director Army.
Aye.
Motion
passes, all approved.
Great, thank you. Then moving on to item 8, business items. The first one is consideration of the Stantec design proposal for the district-wide wastewater collection and treatment plant project.
Yes.
Bob.
Yep, I'll do the staff report for it.
Do you want to share your screen so people have that, or does everybody have it? I mean, maybe we don't need to, but people, it's in the packet online. So.
Right. Madam Mayor, just but briefly, Stantec has submitted originally a proposal to complete the design for the collection system and wastewater treatment plant. Originally, that submission involved a 30% design largely for the core area. The board of directors felt that the project needed to be designed for the entire community. And so thus the actual proposal has been revised now a couple of different times. The latest revision at the direction of the board was to reflect a design for the entire project that would be submitted in phases. Those phases would be the basis of design, then 30% of total design and 60% of total design. It's done in such a way to provide the board with the necessary information that it'll need to move forward with a assessment report that'll be done later in the year. I should mention that it's being done as a project as a whole, and there will be interim reports between now and the time of its completion. It is recommended that the Stantec proposal move forward. I should mention that actual funding has not been received yet, so any action on the part of the board would be to authorize the Stantec to move forward once funding is received. I should note also that the funding is coming in part from the state, from the Water Revolving Fund. It's a planning grant that will be issued to the district as a part of the district's efforts. We applied for that. We've gotten the indication that the grant will be received. It's just going through the contractual process. Expect that will probably be done in the next couple of weeks, and we'll need to bring that back for the board's approval. The other thing I just want to add is the general services agreement also needs to be amended in the similar way that the GSI agreement was amended for a comparable period of time. With that, that concludes my remarks. I'm here as well as Stantec's representatives to answer any questions you might have.
Okay, thank you, Bob. I see Mr. O'Neill has his hand up.
Thank you. Sorry for the delay. I was hoping that we could clarify the action item that is in the agenda. As I could read it, and actually I did the first time, the revised proposal includes a scope of work to complete the preliminary design for the entire district.
Right.
I know what it says, but I want to be able to do it. The idea of a complete preliminary design is kind of offset by the 60% completion of the design. So not to really be too crazy about this is to complete the preliminary aspects to 60% for the entire district-wide. Again, I don't want to be held to that later on because it's not clear. It's not right or wrong, but thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Fayram, I see you with the hand up as well.
Yes, thank you, Madam President. So I have a couple of comments and questions, and I appreciate Ms. Glasser being here, and maybe she can address some of that. Well, one of the items the general manager addressed in that we can't move forward with this until that state grant is executed, because otherwise we can't pay for this. And so I know that's frustrating because I think we were hoping to have that in August. And I know that like every good government, they blame COVID for everything. So I would suggest that if we end up approving this, that we do so limiting it, that the notice to proceed will not be issued by the general manager until the state grant is approved. And I would encourage that we consider a special meeting the minute we get those documents to take that action so that we can do that. I have a couple of other comments, and I don't know where it stands with Stantec. A project like this needs a right-of-way map and some type of estimate. We can't estimate our costs without a right-of-way map and an estimate. And usually a 60% design package would include a right-of-way map. So I don't know if Ms. Glasser can address that. Maybe what I'll do is I'll ask all my questions and then can do that as after. Lastly, it's extremely important that I understand that Stantec has agreed that the fee is a not to exceed, that they will complete the project. And obviously I understand if we change the scope where we add additional work that obviously has to be addressed, but the standard contract and the Stantec that we have in our board packet says that it's an estimated fee. And I just think I understand Mr. Perot had talked to Stantec and they agreed to a not to exceed fee for this, but that's not what's in the contract that's in front of us today. And then I would also lastly mention, and I believe that it was included in the Stantec too, that there would be a site design, and that could be a generic site design. So some of the questions about what would the size of the building be and stuff like that would be addressed through the Stantec design. And I think that would be very helpful for people to see that, what the size of the building would be given the size of the modules of the package plants. And I believe that's part of the design, and Ms. Glaser can address that if it is or it isn't. So those were my comments. I thank you.
Thanks, Tom. Autumn, do you want to address them now,
Sure.
please?
Sure.
Thank you.
Thanks, Director Fayram. So I tried to take notes, so hopefully I caught them. The right-of-way mapping, that was excluded from this current. I agree at some point we'll need to do that. It's something that we can add. Originally when requested, that was not part of the original scope. So right now we do not have right-of-way maps included. The not to exceed, this is a not to exceed. In the document provided, the overall total is not to exceed. So we, that is written into the scope. It's the second sentence under the task order number 2 on page 11. And then the site design, yeah, the intent of the site design was just that, to provide a layout and the ancillary pieces. I know we've talked a lot about the package plant, but there are other items such as any connection points or storage, electrical, those types of things, the building size. So those would all be called out in a site plan. And that is included in the basis of design, 30% and 60% to varying degrees of detail. I think those were your questions.
Yes, thank you. And again, thank you for being here this evening. I appreciate that at least we're of a clear understanding that the right-of-way map is not in your proposal. So if we wanted to add that, I understand that would be beyond what your cost estimate is. You will be mapping out the pipeline routes, and you can at least identify what is public right of way and what is not current public right of way. Is that correct?
Yeah, we will use the assessor's parcel maps. I guess when I say not maps, we will not be doing boundary survey monuments so that it is not qualified as a boundary mapping effort. But we will show generally the information from the assessor's parcel maps.
Okay.
So correct.
All right. Oh, and then one more comment, Madam President. I had, in the proposal, I think you had indicated that you were going to make some general assumptions about the depth of the sewer main. And while I think in a lot of portions of the town that's probably adequate, if you go down, I'll just throw San Marcos Avenue, for example, where the street and the houses are generally at the same level, Grand Avenue, similar thing. There are other parts of the district that have some more grade issues, and I just would ask that you not apply that standard, and in particular up on the hill, which is where I'm at. It would just be horrible to have a design where then the people that are maybe down below the road grade, and we do have some there, would not be able to get access without some private pumping system. And I think we should try to get the design such that everybody can drain by gravity from a lateral into the system. And there are parts of the town where that might be a little more challenging than others. So I would just ask that you not apply that standard in those areas, that you pay a little more attention to what the actual grade differentials on the homes are. And I'll mention that my home is not one of those. I'm up above the street, so I should have no problem, but some of my neighbors are not in the same situation. And again, we just need to make sure that, we allow people to be able to access this system.
Understood. Absolutely.
Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Tom. Director Army, anything?
I have nothing.
Director Ross?
It would be good to hear a little bit more about our communication with the state people that are going to provide matching funding, to hear kind of how things are progressing and how firm we think our estimate of when the money is going to come in.
Madam President, I'll answer that. I was in communication with the state's representative late last week. They indicated that the agreement is being processed. It's pretty much, as they called it, a template agreement because it's a planning grant. So it's not got a lot of complication to it. Other than that, you know, he did not give me any definitive time. You know, and I did try and call back as late as yesterday and wasn't able to reach him. My hope, my guess is it might be by the end of the month, but again, it is the state that is doing the processing. So it isn't much more we can do to expedite it at this point.
It might be worth, if we don't hear by the end of this week, to see if there's any opportunity to go up the food chain.
Okay.
Right. See if there's any way to expedite it.
Thank
All
you.
right. Director Ross, did you have another comment, Tom? Director Fairham?
Yeah. Just to follow up on Director Ross's comments and what you had said is that, and I don't know if this would be helpful or if it would just create some issues, but I do know, I think we've been touched base from time to time from State Senator Lamone's office and the like, and that, you know, maybe a gentle call just to say, you know, I mean, we're on a schedule, we're trying to keep here. And so to the extent that, you know, we're waiting now for quite some time for something that really, if you put the right people on it, you know, is
right
an hour, or maybe give the benefit of the doubt a 4-hour task, and we've been waiting months, and that's just a little frustrating. So
that was my thought as well. So we could ask that, or of her and our assembly member. Perhaps our supervisor would like to ask as well. So Bob and I will work on that. Okay, anything else from any other members? Yes, from my question, just did the technical committee review this version? It reflects technical committee review. Wait, Brian, you have your hand up again. I'm not used to you using that. Or no, psych?
No, either am I used to using it. I just figured it out again. I use Teams. Yeah, I'd like to answer both of those questions. First off, I do have a comment, and I apologize to Autumn and Gabe because when it gets down to a motion, I'm going to make a motion to postpone this to next meeting. I don't believe as a public entity, we have the right to actually approve funding until we have it in our pocket. So unless we intend to pay for the whole thing by ourselves, which I do not believe is true. So if we don't have funding on hand, we should not be able to make the award. You look confused.
No, I'm not confused. I'm looking at council and I'm looking at Bob for a ruling
and
or an opinion.
And, you know, Madam President, I'll toss this over to Ross in a second. You know, I'm anxious to have this move along as quickly as possible because, you know, it's a great deal of work and we need to get them started. Is it possible, as Vice President Fairham indicated, can you make a contingent award, Ross, or is it best just to postpone until we get that notification and agreement?
Well, as soon as we get the money, we can have a special meeting.
Right, we can do that.
Yeah, one of the options that I heard being discussed was essentially saying, yes, Stantec, you're going to get the work, but it's not going to be officially authorized until the money comes in from the state to actually pay for it. That was one of the discussions that I heard. Certainly that would be appropriate. I guess the question is, or my comment would be, it depends a little bit on what exactly it is the board is doing tonight, because the 8A is talking, the recommendation is to authorize the extension of the design services contract and the completion of task order number 2. If that's simply saying, yes, go forward and enter into the contract, certainly you can do that. If it comes time to pay it and the money is there, then it comes time to pay it and the money is there. If it comes time to pay it and the money's not there, well, then you don't have the money to pay for the whatever it is that you're contracting for. So, it's actually more of a public entity financing question than it really is a legal type of issue, because in a way, all you're doing is saying, yes, we pick Stantec potentially, and we are going to earmark this money that comes in to pay for it. And that is a regular thing that happens. The difference here is that the money that specifically will be programmed for that is contingent on a grant. And, the district's in a position potentially of saying, yes, we will agree to this contract. And then if the money doesn't come in, then the district will be in a position of having to try and pay for it someplace else. So if as a policy matter, somebody wants to put restrictions on how this agreement can be carried out, as long as it's consistent with the terms, then, that's something that the directors can do as a policy matter. But in terms of going forward and saying, yes, we want to pick Stantec for the design proposal, and the board wants to provide that, but not authorize the general manager to issue any payment until the money is available, that type of a contingency can be placed on it. That's within the board's power.
Well, I know the business model that the Stantecs of the world go under, and I do not believe that they're going to be interested in working at risk. However, I understand what you said, Ross, is very appealing, is that we can go ahead and award the contract, but not the notice to proceed until funds are available.
Correct.
Gabe, you're nodding.
I saw also Director Fairham had a hand up.
Yeah, and I believe that was one of my comments, is that if the board chooses to approve this tonight, that then no notice to proceed would be, that the motion would direct the general manager not to issue a notice to proceed until we get the state grant approved. To that end, if we're going to do an expedited process for the state money and come back with a special meeting as soon as possible when we get the grant documents, we could table this until that time. However, I think in fairness to Stantec, we should give them some indication that once we get the money, we intend to do this, but not authorize the expenditure of funds, because we can't capture it until the grant's approved.
Thank you, Tom. My apologies.
So I thank you all for that. Bob, my question is, if we were to approve but not approve the notice to proceed, is that in keeping with the terms of the grant? Because I know no work can begin. So does that include letting a contract, or is it actual work?
I think it's actual work, as long as you can't incur any costs. Doing staff work we wouldn't charge those costs in terms of contract amendment preparation. I wouldn't think we would charge those off to the grant anyway. So that effort wouldn't be incurred as a chargeable cost to the grant.
Okay. Well, you think that's what it is, or we know that's the case? My concern now is that if we're going to come back to let a notice to proceed anyway, I just want to make sure we're not jeopardizing the grant out of the gate or causing ourselves unintended complications when we're trying to, go slow to go fast here.
And I can probably answer that in that if it isn't going to scuttle the grant. If, let's say, you incurred these costs, and those costs, because of the timing, weren't reimbursable by the grant, then they would just be on your dime. In other words, that's the clarification I would add.
Okay. So what is the pleasure? What's the recommendation, Bob?
Well, my recommendation, of course, I too want to give Stantec some direction that they can rely on. So I would be comfortable, or my recommendation would be that you authorize the staff to proceed with the amendments that are necessary to the agreement, but withhold the notice to proceed until such a time as the funding is available.
And question for council, are you satisfied with that approach?
Yeah, I am.
Thank you.
Are you busy drafting some language in chat? Council?
No, I wasn't, but I can.
Well, I'm just thinking, I'm looking at how it's agendized, authorization to authorize the extension of the design services contract and the completion of task order number 2. That's we need, that's not the motion.
I believe it's within our authority. Mr. Trindle can correct as the board that this item's noticed, and we're basically taking an approach to move it forward, but we are directing the general manager not to take that last step until the funding's available. I would think that within our noticed authority. Am I correct?
Yeah, you're not bound to follow whatever the staff recommendation is. The most important aspect is that it's provided so that members of the public know what it is that the board's going to discuss. And if the board ends up coming with a different recommendation or a different policy decision, that's well within the board's discretion to do. It's why you're here. So if what I heard the general manager say was that his recommendation would be to authorize staff to complete the necessary amendments to the design services contract, but withhold moving forward with task order number 2 until the funding is made available from the grant.
Would someone like to make that motion?
Madam President, I'll make a motion for purposes of discussion so that we can see if the board's comfortable with it. And let me take a crack at this and maybe get some help from Mr. Trindle along the way. Let me just go back to this.
Do you want to write it in chat so we can monkey with it as you go, please? Or see it?
No.
Please.
Okay, well then you have to give me a minute. Or we could ask Mr. Trindle to do that. I think you heard what we want to do. And I would also mention, Madam President, before we take action, we should ask for public comment on this item.
Yes, I was waiting for there to be, actually, we probably should do that now.
Before the motion.
Before there's a motion.
Yeah.
Thank you for the reminder. Well, while council is drafting a motion, is there any public comment on the Stantec proposal for design services? I don't see a hand or anyone in chat. Okay. Thank you, Ross. Okay, you see it there, Tom?
Yep. Okay, then, Madam President, I'll make the motion to direct and authorize staff to make the necessary revisions to the design service contract with Stantec for award of the project, but withhold authorization to proceed withhold authorization from proceeding with notice to proceed until funding made available from the associated grant funding for the state,
From the state, I think is what he meant.
for this, from the state.
Correct, from the states what I meant.
Okay, there's a motion. Is there a second?
So do we really want to say proceeding with notice to proceed? Is there something we need to do there? It just doesn't sound right to me.
So maybe I could clarify and say, I'll just start mid process. Design service contract with Stantec for the award of the project, but withhold the notice to proceed until funding made available from the state.
That's much better. Thank you.
That one I'll second, Tom. Nice job.
Okay, there's a first and a second. Is there further discussion amongst the board members?
Public comment. Oh, wait, no, you did that. Okay.
Yes, but thank you. Okay, a roll call.
Yes, President
Please, Bob.
Palmer,
Aye.
Vice President Fayram,
Aye.
Director O'Neill,
Aye.
Director Ross,
Aye.
Director Army.
Aye.
The motion is approved. All in favor.
Madam President,
Yes,
I'd like to also just thank Stantec for their patience with us as we've gone through this and for making the modifications and sticking with us along the way.
ditto. Thank you guys and appreciate it. We'll look forward to getting that notice to proceed going sooner than later. We're going to work on that.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you all for that discussion. So we'll move to 8B, consideration of an update and revision to the district wastewater program project description.
Yes, Madam President, this has been on the agenda before. What has transpired, you had a project description that was originally developed, I believe, in 2019. And the board has periodically been working on an update. Essentially, what I did is put together the proposed revised project description based on the comments I had received thus far from various board members on completing an update. It's placed before you for further consideration. The board can either adopt it as revised or suggest that further revisions are in order and so direct, and we would go from there.
Okay, thank you. Any comments from the board? Okay, I read through it again and it's not ready for approval in my opinion. I think we have some edits that have been made and there's some incongruous language later in the document. The whole notion and reason to update it was to bring it into alignment with the approach of designing a project for the entire district, not a phased project. We moved from that to one project with zones. So I'm not comfortable approving it as is. My suggestion and recommendation would be that please get any comments to Bob. And then I think the project management committee should look at it one more time before it comes back to the board. And I'll get all my comments to Bob. So that's my preference.
Madam President.
Yes.
I agree. And I have to confess, I haven't thoroughly digested this, just getting back into town late last night as you did. I know you put more work in that, but I also don't believe there's a time urgency for doing this tonight. And so it's possible that this could come back even on our special meeting if we wanted to move it sooner rather than later. So I would support your proposal.
Okay, thank you. Before we go any further, I don't know that it has to be an action, but is there any public comment on the project description included in the packet? Okay, none. So I would just, again, Bob, I'll get you my comments, but please, if you have any, get them to Bob in the next week. And then we'll work on that, review it, have the project management committee review it and bring it back to the board at the next meeting. Well, while I realize it's not urgent, it's important because I think the project description that's on the website currently is the approved one, which reflects the phased approach, which is outdated. So it's important that it get updated and revised or updated and posted. So it is aligned with the district approach to the system development.
Madam President, should be a motion and a second and a vote to table it, especially if you're going to refer it back to the project management committee.
Okay. Thank you. Can someone do that, please?
Madam President, I'd make a motion that we table item 8B and refer it back to the project management committee to return at a future date.
I'll second.
And who, oh, Army? Okay.
Yep.
Great.
Right, first and second, any further discussion? Thanks for having it on the agenda though, Bob, and we'll get there. All right, so a roll call, please.
Yes, Palmer,
Aye.
Vice President Fayram,
Aye.
Director Ross,
Aye.
Director O'Neill,
Aye.
Director Army.
Aye.
Motion approves and the item is tabled.
All right, thank you. Then 8C, Project Development, Project Management Committee report. Bob.
Yes, I first have an apology to offer. I'd hoped to have the status report updated. I have been working on it bit by bit. I think it's a great tool and that Director Ross has done a great service in getting it thus far. I just, within the last couple of weeks in preparing for this agenda, did not have the time I needed to update it. So I apologize for that. I did want to indicate that I had included a draft of a review of the working time frame to benefit assessment. I'm working to further refine that. The draft that you have before you is more detailed than some of you had indicated that you wanted to see. I've noted board actions on each of those items, but I'm working on a much cleaner revision, but would appreciate any comments that you might have.
Yeah, I can give you my comments offline. I mean, we're getting there. It just needs to be a little bit tighter. But it's a good start. It's a working document. Thank you for that. Any questions or comments for Bob? Are you going to send us the update? Sorry, I've got to go back to the agenda. The work in progress update. I know you didn't have it for this meeting, but will you send it out and post it as well when it is available?
Yes.
Okay. When do you think that would be?
The
status report?
By the end of the month, let me say that much.
Okay. Thank you. All right, so that is, any questions or comments from the board? Any public comment? Okay. Thank you. So moving then to 9, General Manager's Report.
Yes, Madam President, members of the board, we've already discussed that we met today with Environmental Health Services, and they're scheduled to be here next month and be talking a little bit about how they perceive the transition from septic to sewer and what those impacts may be to property owners or how they are looking at approaching it. The other item that we did do today is we did offer a request for funding from the county, and I'll get that out to everyone. That request is really to assist or take on the financial responsibility for the monitoring program. That monitoring program will involve the installation, as most of you know, of 12 monitoring wells. Those will be done in 2 phases. And the benefit of the monitoring well, we've had some discussion tonight, Wells, is that it will answer a lot of the questions about the water quality underlying Los Olivos, and should be generally beneficial to the basin as a whole. And we intend to market that request based on the value to the county, to Regional Water Quality Board, to the GSA, Groundwater Sustainability Agency, and try and get some additional funding to carry that load. I just wanted to mention that that's separate from what GSI is doing on the other hand, which is also doing a study to determine the feasibility of groundwater injection. And there will be some monitoring associated with that as well. The benefit of the injection has been discussed as a primary focus of the board and the district in the direction they want to go. But what GSI will do is initially provide us with a high-level estimate of what those costs are going to be. In any event, the package plant will treat water to potable levels. And so by getting the estimate, we'll know whether injection is really going to end up being the best solution, or are we going to necessarily have to take on other alternatives. In any event, it will be a potable solution, whatever we end up coming up with. And maybe Member O'Neill can comment on that. I think that's the direction the technical committee had wanted to see us move in. Finally, 2 other areas just want to mention. Lisa and I are making a presentation to the Integrated Wastewater Resources Management Board on Monday. They also have some funding available and some shared interest in our area, so they may be another source of funding for our groundwater efforts. Finally, I just wanted to make a note that we have a LAFCO quarterly report on our progress is coming due. And I'm to have that progress report drafted and to LAFCO by next Wednesday. The LAFCO meeting itself will be on October 7th. And we would, I would request that President Palmer be available, or some other member, to attend. And I certainly am going to try and get a draft of that report completed by the end of the week. That concludes my report. Lisa?
Gosh, thank you. Any questions or comments for Bob? I see Brian, and I shouldn't look at you. So I will put the October 7 LAFCO meeting on my calendar. It's at 1. Is it in? Well, anyway, we'll talk about that.
Yes.
And if it has to be in by Wednesday, yeah, if you can have a draft of that no later than Friday. So
Right.
we have some time to work on it together. I'd appreciate it. And yes, then we'll see how Monday's presentation goes and we'll update you. Hopefully we do get some traction with some other funding opportunities, since whether it's for the water quality or the well monitoring, the monitoring program or anything else. So we're hopeful about that. And Jane Gray is helping us put that together. So, and she invited us to the meeting. So anything else for the good of the order? Any informational items, Bob?
I just wanted to remind everyone, if you weren't aware, we will be going back to St. Mark's effective at our next meeting, or going to St. Mark's, and that will be our in-person meeting place through the end of the year. They've agreed to host us, and I will continue to work out details with them. It should be noted that our next meeting will be October 13th, which is the second Wednesday of the month. We went the third Wednesday for scheduling reasons, but we'll be back on our regular schedule next month.
And I misspoke earlier, so I'll have to correct that. Okay.
I have two items, Madam President, when you have a chance.
All right. Are you, anything else, Bob?
No, that's it.
Okay, Counselor.
It's a little bit wonky, but it's technically the second Wednesday that follows the second Tuesday.
Oh, okay.
Because at times the month starts on a Wednesday, or it starts late, and it throws things out of whack. And the intention is to always have it follow a meeting I already have in the area on the second Tuesday that follows the second Monday, to help do a cost sharing across all of my clients. The more pressing or pertinent issue, especially in light of returning to in-person meetings, is the legislature actually moved on a bill that would be helpful to local agencies in the form of permitting continued use of teleconferencing whenever there's a declared state of emergency. So to be clear, it's not a requirement. And to be clear, the governor has not yet signed AB 339. That's AB 339, but it has passed all of the committees on both the House and the Assembly side. It has received all of its amendments and has gone to conference, and all of the conference changes have been accepted. So it's what's called engrossed and enrolled, and it's ready for the governor to sign or to veto. And now that the governor is not worrying about whether he has a job tomorrow, we're hopeful that the governor is going to take action on it. What is important is AB 339 would allow for local agencies to return to or implement a teleconferencing option only with a declared state of emergency, either a statewide declared emergency or a local declared emergency, and not have to wait for the governor to issue an executive order suspending the teleconferencing provisions of the Brown Act. The Brown Act, as written, provides certain requirements if any members of the board are attending via teleconference, and there are a number of them, and they can be particularly onerous in a situation like with COVID, where gathering people together is not necessarily in the interests of public health. So this law, AB 339, would amend the Brown Act to allow for teleconferencing if there is a declared state of emergency, and that can continue essentially indefinitely as long as the declaration of emergency stays in effect, with certain findings to be found. So That's the biggest one. The other one doesn't affect Los Olivos because it's not large enough. But for any government agency that's 250,000 people or more, there's a requirement that those agencies must implement a remote viewing and participation option like Zoom. But the Special Districts Association lobbied to have that requirement adjusted so that it would only apply to the largest of government agencies. In its original version, that requirement would have applied to all agencies in the state, regardless of size, regardless of ability to pay. So if AB 339 is signed, we won't have to play the game of will the governor extend Executive Order N29-20 or won't he? There will be a law because it has an urgency provision. It would go into effect immediately. And therefore, by the end of September, that option, if the law is signed, would again be available. Not as important for Los Olivos at this point, but should the board's comfort level change between now and October, this bill is sitting out there. It's expected to be signed and then be effective immediately thereafter. So that's my informational item. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, anybody else have informational items? All right, 11, call for agenda items. So board members, anything that we're currently not entertaining that you want to see as a future agenda item? Okay. 12, next regular meeting. Bob, this is there's no date on here.
Didn't, in case you wanted to do something different, but the next meeting would be October 13th.
At 6 p.m. at St. Mark's.
6 p.m. at St. Mark's.
Can we make sure that we get maybe on the website homepage that it's going to be back in person on October 13th and get that up now, right? So people know. That'd be great. Okay, then I'll entertain a motion to adjourn at 8:14 from a member.
So moved.
I'll second that. Oh.
Who was the first? I'm sorry, I didn't quite catch that.
Fay Ram.
Okay.
All right, a first and a second. And just before we adjourn, I want to thank all of those who are still here listening, and thank you for participating this evening. We really appreciate having our neighbors here and being engaged in the process, so thank you. All right. Roll call, or should we? Anyway, roll call, please.
Yes, President Palmer.
Yes. Aye.
Vice President Fayram.
Aye.
Director O'Neill.
Aye.
Director Ross.
Aye.
Director Arme.
Aye.
Motion's approved.
All right.
Thank
you all. Thank you, everybody. Have a good evening. Be well.